a lot of business and a lot of life is persistence. So you just have to stay in the game because other people will leave the game or give up sooner than later. So sometimes it's just one more step forward. And that certainly helps. And for me, I've done a lot of things in my life to increase my resilience, like the Ironman triathlon, climbing mountains, hiking the Grand Canyon rim to rim, starting businesses. I've done a lot of things that have made me realize that I'm capable of more than I think I am. And my own limitations are typically what holds me back.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Tech Leaders Playbook. Today, I have a special guest, Christian Espinosa. Christian is a veteran, a cybersecurity expert, an adventure enthusiast, apparently. He has built and sold a successful cybersecurity company, and he's the founder of Blue Goat Cyber. And we all know how important cybersecurity is, especially for medical devices, especially with the whole AI scenario happening, growing very rapidly. Cybersecurity is incredibly important. So, welcome to the show, Christian. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Avitas.
Absolutely. Christian, let's talk about your journey up to this point, right? Because we all have a history. We all have a story on how we got to this point. So tell me a little bit about your early life and how you got to this point.
Early on, I moved from Riverside, California to Arkansas when I was 12. It was quite the culture shock. Moved to a small town of like 800 people. And my childhood was very traumatic. My mother was addicted to pain meds and other drugs, and we were on welfare and WIC and government cheese and powdered milk and all of that. And there's a lot of cops coming over, car wrecks and things like that. So I was super motivated to get out of my situation in Arkansas. It's like that was my North Star was to, escape from my childhood, basically. So I worked super hard academically. I was number 2 in my class. I got scholarships to all the military academies, and pretty much everywhere I applied for every scholarship there possibly was and every grant. And I decided to go to the Air Force Academy. So I went to the Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs, spent 6 years in active duty after I graduated, and worked in communications. I wanted to fly jets. I watched Top Gun, and I know that's Navy, but I wanted to fly jets, but they cut all the pilot slots a couple years before I graduated. So I did information assurance or cybersecurity in the military. Then I did defense contracting work for a while. I worked for a commercial company where I was in charge of a security device and helping get that to market. I also helped test aircraft to make sure aircraft were hack-proof. So I would go on the planes and try to hack into them while they're in the air and on the ground and things like that as well. So that was kind of a cool gig. And then I started my first cybersecurity company. I sold that in 2020, and now I have Blue Goat Cyber, my next cybersecurity company. I'm working to scale that.
Congrats on the tremendous growth, man. From being on welfare to being a founder who succeeded and exited his business and is going to do it again in the next few years, I'm sure. That's incredible.
Yeah, thank you.
Christian, a couple episodes back, I interviewed a gentleman named Boo Bukasis, I believe his last name. He was an Austrian fighter pilot. Really, really cool. Very cool episode. And I think it'll be very interesting for you just because you like that world. And also he talks about how to apply that to businesses, that kind of fighter pilot mindset. So I think you'll enjoy that. Definitely check that out.
Yeah, for sure.
What, you were in the military. Like first of all, what branch? And more importantly, how did this experience shape your approach to leadership and cybersecurity?
So I was in the Air Force.
Okay.
I went to the Air Force Academy, which is like 4 years of basic training in a, quote, leadership laboratory. So I think a lot of the leadership skills I learned were from the military because I was an officer in the military, and you've got to lead people, and you got to, be a good follower as well. And not all those are applicable to the commercial world because the military is a lot different. But I think going to the Air Force Academy was a big eye opener for me. I thought it was pretty smart, coming from Arkansas. I was number 2 in my class, but I was certainly not the smartest when I went to the Air Force Academy. I had taken like Calc 1 in Arkansas, and people showed up with taking Calc 4, for instance, Calculus 4. So I was pretty behind the power curve when I went there.
Calculus 4. Wow. I didn't know there was a Calculus 4.
I didn't either.
That's awesome. And so, but what was like the key leadership lesson from those years?
I think the key leadership lesson is in order to be a good leader, you have to be a good follower. A lot of people don't understand that. But if you have problems following other people's leadership, you're probably not going to be a great leader. So that's one of the key lessons. And the other one that I don't know if I really learned it in the Air Force Academy, but I believe that leadership starts with self-leadership. We often don't think about leading ourselves. And we often also think that we have to have like this organization to lead. But we can lead in a lot of situations, including ourselves, with our health, our wealth, our relationships. We can lead in our family, we can lead our community. There's all kinds of ways to lead. And I think people often think they have to be appointed a leader in order to lead. I don't think that's true, though.
Agree. After your military career, what drew you into getting even into cybersecurity? Because that's not common.
So I did information assurance in the military since I didn't get the pilot slot, which is basically like cybersecurity. We protected classified networks from people stealing the data. And I decided I wanted to get into cybersecurity when I was leaving the military. I thought that this is the wave of the future. And specifically what I wanted to do was ethical hacking, where people hire you to break into their environment, either physically or through conning someone or, across the internet, technically on the hands-on keyboard. And that's what I ended up doing for quite some time. And then my first company, that's what we did. And my company now, we do that, but we focus specifically on medical devices.
Nice. So that's my next question. Like when you established Blue Goat Cyber, what gaps in cybersecurity did you see in the market, and what are you aiming to address with this great product?
Yes. So when I had Alpine Security, my first cybersecurity company, I tried to do too much. I did training, I offered services, and there was services across numerous industries. And I feel like our brand was diluted because I did too many things. I did have a successful exit, but I feel like I'm trying to learn and not pay the dumb tax with this company. So with Blue Goat Cyber, our niche is medical device cybersecurity. That's what we focus on. And there's a couple reasons I focus on that. One of them from a business standpoint is it's more of a blue ocean strategy. There's not thousands of cybersecurity companies in that space. It's very challenging to be in that space, and I'd rather only compete with a couple people versus, 1,000 and have my services commoditized. That's one reason. The second reason is I'm very passionate about healthcare and the advances in healthcare. A couple years ago, I almost died from blood clots, for instance, and if they weren't able to figure out I had blood clots, I may have actually died. So I'm very passionate about healthcare and these advances in healthcare. And I would hate for these advances to be rolled back because somebody hacked into a drug infusion pump or an implantable or surgical robot. So I'm doing my best to contribute in a way to make these devices secure, because the impact is much greater if this device is hacked as well. It could kill somebody. Huge. Versus like a website that has your credit card information. They can steal your credit card information, but that's not as big of a deal.
It's funny you said this. So my daughter is 15 years old, my daughter Sophia, and she's writing a paper right now on how I think it was like one in 8 diseases that are diagnosed are misdiagnosed, which could lead to death, right? And she's writing a paper on how AI could diagnose issues more accurately than most doctors. So this is her argument. So I find this very interesting.
Yeah, we are working with several companies that have, it's called software as a medical device, but it has AI enabled. So they can take imaging from an MRI, run it through this algorithm. The AI analyzes the imaging and can pinpoint things much better than the doctor. So that paper she's writing is completely accurate.
That's perfect. Good. I'm glad to hear it. I mean, I was impressed. It was very good. Christian, you wrote a book, I believe, right? The Smartest Person in the Room?
Yes, that's my first book. I've written a couple books, so yeah.
That's awesome. I'm looking forward to reading it. In your book, you discuss the limitations of seeking validation through intelligence. Can you elaborate on how this realization that you weren't the smartest person in the room you talked about influenced your leadership style and your approach to team building?
Yeah, so I feel like whenever, at least for me, when I write a book, the book should be transformational to me as well as whoever reads it. And writing that book was very transformational. I wrote the book because I realized after a lot of reflection that most of the problems, like 99% of them in my first cybersecurity company, were because my staff didn't have people skills or emotional intelligence. They were super high IQ, but they would talk over people's head and not collaborate well because they're always looking for an opportunity to prove how smart they were intellectually. And obviously that doesn't make for a good interaction with a client if you're talking over the client's head or good communication. And when I noticed that about my staff, I realized when I connected the dots and looked back over my career that I had been one of those same sort of people, that I was looking for opportunities to outsmart somebody. And I feel like we all want to be significant for something, and our ego does whatever it can to protect our identity that we create for ourselves. And if our identity is being smarter than other people, then we look for ways to do that. And I realized that was holding me under a glass ceiling. So, they call it glass ceiling because you can't see it. So I fixed that in myself, and then I fixed that in my organization, which required me to let some people go and change the culture. And that's what I wrote the book about. And I feel like our ego gets in the way. I like to say your ego is not your amigo. And I've tried to put mine aside.
That's huge, man. I agree 100%. I constantly find rooms where I'm not the smartest person. It's actually inspiring because I get excited when I'm around people that are much smarter. They've scaled their businesses much faster. They run bigger businesses. They've succeeded in, something that a lot faster or better than me. Even if that's not the case, I find myself intrigued by people that have a very unique skill set that I'm struggling with. So when I see someone that's like ultra focused, I'm like, how do they do it? They're way more focused than I am. I can learn something from this person. So even in that setting, even if I'm smarter than that person, meaning I just have more experience, I have done more, I know more, just because maybe I'm alive longer, I've had whatever education or more experience, but that person is smarter in that small thing. I'm gonna focus on that and learn from it, completely open, no ego. I love that. So I encourage that as well for everybody. Don't ever be the smartest person in the room, right? And if you are, for a very short period of time, and that's okay, and constantly give so that the rest of the people get up to that level very quickly. Christian, let's talk about handling challenges. As someone who's faced significant challenges, right? In your early days, it sounds like, in your personal, professional lives, what strategies do you employ in overcoming these obstacles and stay motivated? Because that's challenging.
Yeah. It is still challenging. It's my second business. I've got more than two businesses, but my second cybersecurity business, there's still challenges. I always think like, what's the worst that's going to happen? And what can I do to learn in this process? Because I feel like if I, quote, fail or don't succeed, if I've learned something in that process, that's ultimately what matters for me. So I also understand that a lot of business and a lot of life is persistence. So you just have to stay in the game because other people will leave the game or give up sooner than later. So sometimes it's just one more step forward. Yep. And that certainly helps. And for me, I've done a lot of things in my life to increase my resilience, like the Ironman triathlon, climbing mountains, hiking the Grand Canyon rim to rim, starting businesses. I've done a lot of things that have made me realize that I'm capable of more than I think I am. And my own limitations are typically what holds me back.
Huge, man. Huge. One of the, you talked about a concept, I call it staying power. And some of my smartest friends who have asked me for advice over the years till this day quote that phrase got me through a very tough time in my business. Oh, this phrase was what did it for me. And I'm like, really? All I say is staying power. It's all about staying power. I think it's huge, man, because when I say staying power, it's financial staying power to go a little bit longer than everybody else. Mm-hmm. It's mental staying power, just staying motivated and mentally engaged. And it's physical staying power. And okay, of course, I think I mentioned monetary. There's so much a toll that failure takes on you on a daily basis. But if you just have that staying power mentally, physically, emotionally, monetarily, you will outpace most people and eventually succeed, even if you're struggling right now. So I thought that was definitely dead on. Christian, let's talk about one of your biggest expertise. Let's talk about the cybersecurity landscape. With the constant evolution of technology, now it's all about AI. What are the biggest cybersecurity threats you see today? And how should companies prepare to combat that whether it's from a medical perspective, because you're an expert in that field, or just generally?
I think the threat landscape is largely the same from the perspective that most organizations don't do the fundamental cybersecurity things. There's like very fundamental things you should do, but most people kind of skip those and try to do some advanced solution. So I think if we did those fundamental things, if you're a small company, you should do those fundamental things. You'd have less data breaches. The other component that is changing the threat landscape is AI. Ultimately, the defenders of the environment have AI-enabled products and AI-enabled technology, and we think it's going to improve our defense. But if we look at the overall landscape, the criminals are using AI, and they're very motivated to make money and cause havoc. So they're programming their AI probably better than the defenders are programming the AI. So I think that's something to consider. But the AI is really irrelevant if you don't do the fundamental things. And I'm talking about simple things like multi-factor authentication, patching your systems and your applications. These fundamental things that people often skip and go for like this next gen product or something that won't really help.
That's great. You're big on adventures and extreme sports and mounting and all this. How are these things influence your view on management in a business?
Well, they give me perspective about risk. Like skydiving, for instance, the worst that can happen is you can die. With business, the worst case scenario, you're probably not going to die. You may feel like you want to die. I've been in the fetal position, like crying before when I thought I was like not going to make payroll for my staff, and nobody would lend me money. But I figured it out. But that's not as bad as like both your parachutes fell and you're going to hit the ground from 14,000 feet, for instance. So it gives me the perspective. And it's also really about risk management. People think doing skydiving is risky. It is risky, but like with business or anything else, there's things you do to reduce the risk. And I am very attuned to risk management. I mean, that's ultimately what cybersecurity is about as well, is reducing the risk to an acceptable level.
Yet you do crazy adventure sports.
Yeah, well, even like with skydiving, it is a risky activity, but if you are trained, you can reduce the risk if you have 2 altimeters, if you wear a helmet, if you've got a reserve parachute, if you have an automatic activation device, which will deploy your reserve if you're knocked unconscious or something. There's things you could do to reduce the risk. You can't always obviously eliminate all the risk, but you could do things to reduce it. Just like in business.
Yep.
If you have a business plan, if you hire the right people, if you have the right leadership skills, the right culture, the right target addressable market, you can reduce your risk as well.
You keep de-risking the risks until it's manageable and potentially sets you up for success. That's great.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the in-between, life in the micro. I believe this is your latest book, right?
Correct. That is my latest book. That book is more of a focused memoir after some reflection on my life of where I've got things right and where I've got things wrong. So one of the things I had to realize is I've been so hyper focused on the big goal. I'm kind of a high achiever, I guess you put that label. And often I got so hyper focused on that big goal that the items between where I was and that goal, I just sort of put blinders on, ignored all these like micro moments in front of me. And, that caused relationships to suffer, my health to suffer, my wealth to suffer, and other things because I wasn't balancing the two well enough, the macro and the micro. So now I try to be cognizant of what's right in front of me and show up with intention and realize that as long as I'm making progress towards this goal, I don't need to be like solely focused on it, because in my life, what I realized is I would go after one goal and then it was never enough. Then I'd be like on to the next goal. And I was just chasing these things and ignoring, the relationships and things right in front of me.
So tell me, what's the concept of micro moments?
Yeah, so the micro moment is just a small moment in your day that you may not think is significant, but it can be very significant. Like an example is for me, and this has stuck with me for many years, in the early 90s, I got a divorce and I was in a really bad state. It was like kind of messed me up, mentally and emotionally. And I remember going to this grocery store, and it's called Schnucks. I used to live in St. Louis, it's in the St. Louis area. And, the checkout woman was scanning my groceries, and she must have noticed like that I was in like this distressed state. But so she stopped scanning the groceries and looked straight at me and just asked me how I was doing, like with sincerity. And that moment, like made me realize, wow, this changed my life, because I wrote about it in actually both of my books. And it made me realize like strangers do care.
Yeah. Does she know this, Christian? Did you ever find her and tell her this?
No.
Man, how cool would it be if you went back to that store? It's probably too late. Gave her a book and said, "Hey, on page 18, I wrote about you and the impact you had on my life." I think that would be super powerful.
Yeah, that would be super powerful. I mean, I wrote about it, like 20 years after the incident, but yeah, that would be.
Well, you're a cybersecurity guy. I'm sure you could figure out who it was very quickly. Yes. I mean, just think about the impact, small kindness makes on people's lives, man. Like, people say, just taking a minute to genuinely care about someone, not the good old like, "Hey, how you doing?" But the actually like, "Hey, are you okay? You seem down, I don't know you from Adam. Do you need to talk?" I think could change someone's lives, So I think that's huge. So, that's a really, really cool thing to write about. I think we all should take a minute and be there for other folks, Yeah. Let's talk about cybersecurity. What does Blue Goat do? I know we talked about medical device, securing medical devices, which literally is like life altering, life saving potentially. Who would be a potential customer of yours, and how do they utilize this product?
So our potential customers are medical device manufacturers. So it could be a large manufacturer that has a suite of products. It could be a small one that's a venture capital-backed company that has an innovative product. They need to get these products approved by the FDA in order to sell them in the United States, and by the EU MDR in Europe and a few other organizations. But in the United States, it's the FDA. So we help these organizations make sure all the cybersecurity requirements that the FDA requires are met and articulated appropriately in a submission package for the device manufacturer to get cleared to sell in the United States. So we do testing, we do documentation, we do threat modeling, and we work hand in hand with the device manufacturer. We don't have a product per se; it's mainly service based.
Okay,
but that's what we do.
Nice, very cool. Looking ahead, how do you see cybersecurity evolving in the next few years to a decade, and what skills should professionals develop to stay relevant and maybe even get ahead of the game?
I think cybersecurity is evolving with AI. So I think this is the year you need to learn AI. I feel like if you don't learn AI in 2024, you're going to become relatively obsolete. And when I say learn AI, I mean learn how to use it to enhance your business, to enhance your writing, in as many ways as possible. There's a lot of things you can do with AI. From a defense perspective in cybersecurity, if you already understand AI, that'll help you with a career. It'll also help you defend your environment better, because the cyber criminals are using AI to write email chains to try to con your people. And if you understand AI, you can probably pick up that it was an AI written email, for instance. So I think that is a big thing. And I also think what we call cyber physical systems will be the next big thing. And that we do medical device cybersecurity, which is physical devices. I live in Phoenix right now, and we have autonomous driving cars. I take them quite often. And
you've actually been a passenger in a autonomous car.
Yeah, I've probably ridden in one like 50 times.
Oh,
yeah.
That's amazing. Our team, so we, HireCloud is a technology consulting and recruiting firm. We built a lot of AI teams for autonomous driving, computer vision companies, all this stuff. So that's interesting. How does it feel? I mean, are you in the back? Are you in the front? Tell us the experience.
I've ridden in the front and in the back. And the irony is, a lot of people, when I told them, I've taken autonomous driving cars, because they have them in Phoenix and I think San Francisco and Austin, or at least the brand Waymo does. a lot of people think they're super dangerous, but I actually feel like as long as they're hack proof, that they're actually more safe. And I remember here the cars won't go drop you off at the gate at the airport. So I took an Uber once after people were giving me such a hard time about the autonomous driving cars. My girlfriend and I took an Uber, and an 85-year-old woman shows up. Bless her heart, she's trying to make some money on the side. But before my girlfriend even fully got in the car, she started taking off. That could have been an issue. And then she got lost on the way to the airport as well. And those things never happen with autonomous driving cars. It's never happened. So I think they're safe.
In a lot of ways, it's safer. It's just so unique. It's just you in a car, but you're not driving.
That's right. Yeah. And
you don't even have to make small talk.
No small talk. No small talk. No tipping. You can program it to play your music as soon as you get in the car, whatever your playlist is.
I got to check this out. I'm going to Miami soon. Maybe I'll take an autonomous Uber or something.
You should definitely check it out. It's quite the experience. And they're all over here in Phoenix area, and it's my preference. I prefer them to Uber. And I've been in enough of them where I've seen pretty much every scenario. Like a cat will run out in front of the car. It'll stop.
Wow.
The only scenario I saw the car got confused is there was a maintenance truck which had like a left turning signal and a right turning signal, and they're both going on at the same time. So the car couldn't figure out which way this thing was moving. It was parked. So it kind of kept going back and forth, and then eventually just backed up and went around the truck. But that was the only time it kind of got confused.
Wow. Christian, you're a very ambitious person, it sounds like. I mean, you talked about right before this call, you talked about how you're going to 10x your company and even surpass the parent company and all that, which is really cool. How do you balance but yet like you have all these adventures you go on and you do all this fun stuff. Like, how do you balance your professional ambitions, which are very, very high, with your personal passions, health, especially given your involvement in demanding physical stuff?
Good question. So this year, I've been more about saying no to almost everything. So between like January and the end of probably middle of April or beginning of April, I pretty much just worked on my business like 15 hours a day. That's all I did in order to get leads coming in and do search engine optimization and optimize some processes and get the foundation so we could scale. And now the rewards are coming in from that. So I'm able to, go back to working out more and start considering like some of those adventurous activities. But I was super focused for, over 3.5 months. That's really all I did was work on my business like every day. And in the past, I would have, tried to do everything in a day. And I don't think I would have made as much progress.
It sounds like you're a big proponent of deep work, right? Just really focusing on one thing and then completely kind of disengaging and doing something else at a higher level. Yeah,
for sure. I focused purely on inbound leads for my business and how to get those, because I feel like there's always more success with inbound leads. And,
huge.
That's really all I did. Even like when I was taking a break, I was watching YouTube videos on how to, get more leads through your website and how to automate things and all of that.
This is good advice, because I struggle with that. I like to do everything, right? I don't want to miss out on that. I definitely want to be there for my family. My business needs this, but it needs 12 other things, and friends are inviting me out. I feel like I should. It's been too long. And what ends up happening is you give everyone very small snippets of you, and it's not enough, and you end up being drained. There's days I've left where I've worked 12 hours. I'm like, what the hell did I accomplish today? And then I go home, I'm exhausted, so I don't want to, do anything there. And so it ends up creating this kind of cycle of just nothingness, right? So I think that's very, very important. Christian, let's talk about, give us 3 pieces of advice that everybody could leave this podcast and apply in their daily lives. Let's start with just, cybersecurity or business, and then we'll do one personal thing.
With business, we were just sort of talking about this. I'm a proponent of monotasking, like working on one thing only with concentrated effort. I don't think we're very productive if we try to multitask. Multitasking will make you very busy, but not very productive. And I feel like in order to 10x my business, I needed to monotask for those 3 months on one thing. And that meant saying no to a lot of things. People wanting, like you said, people wanted me to go to dinner, wanted me to go do something over the weekend. I just had to say no to it. And what I realize is if you get in the habit of saying yes to a lot of things, you end up being the supporting actor in everybody else's movie versus the star of your own movie. So for me, this year has been about saying no way more often.
That's awesome. What else? Give us 2 more.
For business, I think it's important to understand your target addressable market or your TAM, and make sure you understand your actual buyer and what their world looks like. I'm a proponent of Donald Miller, like the story brand framework and brand script. I think that really helped me dial in my messaging and who I was going after. And if you have that dialed in, it's going to be much easier to get prospects. With my first company, I just sort of built a cybersecurity company and thought clients would show up. It didn't happen. So now I'm very focused, and I'm not just focused on a market with a lot of competitors. I'm focused on a blue ocean strategy, which is why I'm working in the medical device space, because otherwise it's just a race to the bottom from a commoditization perspective.
Agreed.
From my view.
Agreed. One more.
One more is, I believe a business, if we're talking about business, is only going to grow as much as the owner or the CEO or the person that's running the business. So if you want your business to get above 3 million, let's say, you have to be a different person than what you were when you got it to 3 million, because it takes a different skill set. It takes a different perspective. And a lot of us think that, don't even think about this. And I had to have this conversation with a couple of members of my team because they want to grow with me until the business is really big. And I said, that's fine as long as you are growing, because if you aren't growing yourself, then I'm going to have to hire somebody else, because how you're running things now and how you view things now is not what it's going to take when we're at $10 million. It's a very different skill set. So I think if you hold the mirror at yourself, as the owner of a business or the person running the business is where it is because of you.
Huge. That's huge, Christian. Where can people find you, whether it's for Blue Goat or just learning from all your knowledge and wisdom?
Yeah, they can find me on bluegoatcyber.com or christianespinosa.com. My books are on Amazon, and I'm on pretty much all social media as well.
Which one of your books should we read next or first?
I think the in-between, Life in the Micro, is probably a better book. It's more, like I said, a focused memoir, not so much a how-to book. And I've gotten a lot of good feedback on that book.
I really, really, really liked your monotasking concept, Christian. But for me, it's bigger than what I was thinking, because monotasking to me just means, dude, at least for that hour, just do one thing and do it really well. You're taking it to the next level. It's no. It's one thing only for your business for a long time. It's both, it sounds like, right? It's just, it's mono for you. It was just, let's focus on inbound leads, and maybe you chunk it up hourly or whatever. This is something I'm openly trying to work on right now, is just really, really focusing on one area, because I get spread very thin and wearing multiple hats, both in my business and also, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm an investor, I'm an advisor, I'm a real estate builder. And there's just so much going on. I'm a family man. So I'm pulled in, so many different areas, like what's the candy, Tappy, is that what it's called? Where you just keep pulling it from all directions, and it becomes Laffy Taffy. It stresses you out mentally and it drains you physically. So great lesson here.
That's a good analogy. I like to think there's all these tethers, right, pulling you different directions. I've been trying to cut those tethers loose. Nice.
I like it. Well, Christian, thank you so much for being here, man. It's been a lot of fun, and I've learned a lot. Hopefully my audiences as well.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Thanks. And that brings us to the end of another great episode of the Tech Leaders Playbook. I want to thank you for joining us and hope you took away some valuable insights to apply in your professional journey. Don't forget to subscribe on your preferred podcast platform so you don't miss out on the next great conversation. I promise it'll be good. If you enjoyed today's episode, we'd appreciate if you could leave us a review. Your feedback not only helps us improve, but it also helps others discover the podcast. Better leaders mean better working environments. Better working environments leads to happier people. Remember, a rising tide lifts all boats. I'm Avita Santablian, and this has been the Tech Leaders Playbook. Keep leading, keep learning, keep giving, and I'll see you on the next one. Until then, stay inspired, my friends.